What if the smallest word in your vocabulary held the power to completely change your life? We grow up learning that yes is good. Say yes to opportunities. Say yes to others. Say yes to what the world expects. But we're rarely taught the deeper power of no. No is often seen as rejection, as negative, as cold. But what if that's the greatest lie you've ever been told? Because no is sacred. Every time you say no, you're drawing a line. You're declaring where you end and the world begins. It's not an act of resistance, it's an act of remembering, of choosing. And here's the truth no one tells you. Most of the pain in your life doesn't come from what you said yes to. It comes from all the no's you didn't say. The times you stayed silent, the times you let things slide, the times you ignored that whisper inside because you didn't want to upset anyone. And slowly how you began to disappear. Saying no isn't about being harsh. It's about being real. It's about protecting the one thing no one else can protect for you, your energy. So ask yourself, what have you allowed into your life simply because you didn't say no? Long before the word boundary was used in therapy rooms, it was written into the soul of ancient traditions. In the East, the Tao teaches us to move with the natural flow of life. But to do so, you must first learn where not to go. The master does not cling. The wise man walks away when it is time. In the West, the Stoics taught the art of self-command. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor philosopher, wrote of turning inward, of refusing to be ruled by external chaos. His life was a practice of sacred refusal. Even the samurai had codes of honor based not on what they pursued, but what they refused to tolerate. In all ancient paths, the true power was never in the yes, it was in the precise, deliberate, courageous no. Indigenous tribes practiced rites of passage that began with separation, a turning away from comfort, from distraction, from the crowd, because to find your soul, you must first leave the noise. Saying no isn't new. It's ancient. It's spiritual. It's how seekers separated from sleepwalkers, how initiates found clarity. Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." If you can't say no to the wrong job, the wrong person, the wrong life, then the world will decide for you. Every time you say no, you are taking back authorship. You are drawing a sacred circle around your soul and saying, "This is mine." But let's go deeper. Why is it so hard to say no? The answer lies in the shadows, in the forgotten child inside you, who learned that love must be earned, that rejection is dangerous, that being nice is safer than being true. You see, most of us were raised to please. We were praised when we obeyed. We were ignored when we rebelled. Slowly, we built a mask, a version of ourselves others would like. And we wore it every day until we forgot it was a mask. This is the parasite of pleasing, a silent force that feeds on your need to be liked. You say yes to things you don't want to do. You smile when you want to scream. You stay when your soul is begging to leave. And every time you betray yourself to keep the peace, you create a war inside. Psychologists call this the fawn response, when we avoid conflict by becoming smaller. But this is not peace. This is spiritual erosion. Carl Jung called it the persona, the false self we show the world. But behind that mask is a growing shadow, filled with resentment, anger, and the quiet scream of someone who forgot how to say no. But it's not too late. You can still choose. You can still peel back the mask and say, "I'm done being who you need me to be," because the real you fears waiting on the other side of that word. There's a voice inside you, small but powerful. It doesn't speak often, it waits, patiently, until one day, when you've had enough, it rises. It doesn't whisper, it roars. No, not from anger, not from hate, but from truth. This is your sacred rage, the part of you that remembers who you are, the part that sees through the lie, the part that finally says, "Enough." This no is not destruction. It's liberation. It's what the mystics called the fire, the burning away of all that is false. In alchemy, transformation begins with dissolution. First, things must fall apart. The lead must melt before it can become gold. Your no is that melting point. Saying no to the wrong relationship, no to the job that drains your soul, no to the version of you that plays small to keep others comfortable. It's not rebellion, it's alignment. When you say no, you are not closing a door. You're opening the right one. The world may call it selfish, but your soul calls it sacred. Because finally, after years of living in fragments, you begin to return to yourself, piece by piece, no by no. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman, a writer who had it all. The perfect marriage, the dream job, the smile everyone admired. But something felt wrong. She couldn't explain it. She only knew this, her soul was starving. One day she said, no, to the marriage, to the job, to the image. Everyone thought she had lost her mind, but in time, she found it. Another man, a monk, left his monastery after years of silence. Not because he lost his faith, but because he finally heard it. The rules, the rituals, and they no longer aligned with truth. He said no to the form, and in the formless, he found the divine. And then, there's the unknown artist who refused the corporate world. He lived poor, unseen, laughed at, but he said no to fame without soul. And in the quiet, his art became prayer. These stories are not about endings, they're about awakenings. Saying no is often the beginning of a new story, one that's real. Because the moment you stop living for others, you start living for something much higher, for truth. Here's a deeper mystery. In art, it's not the lines that define the image, but the space between them. In music, it's the silence between the notes that gives the melody soul. In life, it's not just what you pursue, it's what you refuse. The Tao says the space in a clay pot is what makes it useful. Emptiness isn't lack, it's potential. Your no creates space, sacred space, space for healing, space for the unknown, space for the divine to enter. This is what the mystics knew, that sometimes God speaks not through addition but subtraction. In every decision you are sculpting your life, and no is the chisel. The question is, what are you carving? Are you building a life of noise? Or are you shaping something sacred? Let's end with this. Every true no is actually a deeper yes, a yes to your inner knowing, a yes to your peace, a yes to the life that's waiting for you, beyond fear, beyond obligation, beyond the need to please. Saying no is not rejection. It's remembering. It's returning to what is real. So look at your life now. What are you still saying yes to? That is draining your soul? What would happen if you stopped? What would happen if today you said no, not to hurt, not to fight, but to honor something deep inside you, to draw a line, to breathe, to begin again? Because sometimes the most powerful way to change your life is to simply say no. Or what if I told you, every time you say yes, you might be giving away a piece of your soul? It doesn't sound dangerous. Saying yes feels polite, helpful, open-hearted. But underneath it all, many of us are drowning in silent obligations. We say yes to invitations we don't want, yes to conversations that exhaust us, yes to careers that slowly deaden our spirit. Why? Because deep down, we are afraid. Afraid of disappointing others, afraid of missing out, afraid of being seen as selfish. But here's the paradox. In trying to be everything for everyone, we become no one for ourselves. Soren Kierkegaard once said, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are, and that despair begins the moment you start saying yes to things that aren't you." This is not just about boundaries, it's about truth. Every false yes is a betrayal of your essence, and every true no is an act of spiritual rebellion. Because the truth is, you are not here to please. You are here to live. Across the ancient world, there was a secret most modern minds have forgotten. The word no is sacred. Buddhist monks said no to desire. Stoics said no to comfort. Mystics said no to the illusion of control. Diogenes lived in a barrel and rejected the wealth of kings Daolao. Zhu walked away from civilization to write the Tao in silence. They weren't afraid of missing out. They were afraid of losing themselves. In ancient teachings, refusal wasn't weakness. It was alignment. It meant clearing space for what truly mattered. We chase after more success, more followers, more validation, but the sacred ones chased less. They emptied. They let go. They said no to the noise so they could hear the whisper of truth. What they knew was that saying no to the world can sometimes be the only way to say yes to the soul. Growth isn't just about what you accept. It's about what you're willing to leave behind. Every real transformation begins with a refusal. Think of the caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by adding wings to its old life. It surrenders, breaks down, lets the past die. In your life, how many things have you clung to just because you were too afraid to say no? A draining relationship, a toxic job, a version of yourself that no longer fits? Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of us we reject or ignore. But there's another shadow, the one